Okay, welcome to Module 2. In this module, I want to cover something important, and what's funny about it is this is something that I actually didn't even know to think about before I started my company. No one had ever mentioned this, and it was something that I only figured out as a light bulb moment in retrospect by analyzing what happened with me, as well as interviewing other entrepreneurs in my life. That's something I do a lot, is I interview, not in the form of a podcast, although I hope to one day, but even just at coffee, hanging out with them over a lunch, talking to them about things in their story. You analyze them and you start to understand patterns of where, oh, this happened or this happened, and it starts to make sense. And this is one of those things. So when I was writing this course, I thought, this is really important that I put this in there at the beginning, because you're going to hear me use this word multiple times in this video. It will help us to calibrate properly before we start and save us a ton of money and time and effort and confusion down the road. And let me explain. What we're talking about today long-term brand versus short-term profit, okay? This is really important. There are those of you out there who have a vision to build a brand, a lifestyle, and the ability to have autonomy long-term. There are also those of you who are in your teens and realizing, crap, I'm a spender, or I didn't think about this, or I jacked it up, or whatever. I can't afford a car and I need a car now. Or I have a buddy who just got back from Tokyo, Japan. Those type of trips cost thousands. Something that they always say is live it up when you're young, or enjoy your youth, or whatever. And well, okay, I'm single, I'm young, I want to be able to travel the world. That costs money. I don't have money. I want to live it up. How am I supposed to? And so those would be examples of a short-term profit situation where you need something quick and Chick-fil-A isn't going to cut it, or Starbucks, or whatever. All of those spaces where you can kind of shift in and shift out in a season are not going to allow you to accrue the resources and the ability to execute on whatever your vision is. And so you're like, maybe, just maybe, could I start my own company for just a little bit, make some money, and then get out? My answer is a resounding yes. Like if you know what to do, absolutely, and it's actually simpler than you think. It just is going to take hard work, but then again, what doesn't? There are 3 groups of people out there, and most of them don't know what group they're in yet. And understanding that is going to help us calibrate, okay? Group number 1 is the people with the short-term profit type of a vision. Group number 2 is the people with the long-term brand type of a vision. Group number 3 is who I was and who I'm suspecting a decent portion of you are going to be, which is, I hadn't even given it a thought. Gabe, I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to learn a craft, I'm trying to make money. I haven't even thought about it. And that isn't the same as to say I haven't thought about that specifically, because I spent a lot of time thinking when I was planning my first company. But I hadn't thought about that specific concept, and this is really important. So let me tell you a story. And this isn't a specific story, this is more a conceptual story of a common theme that I have observed occurring in multiple entrepreneurs that I've interviewed between the ages of 40 and 60. Okay, so they have made a good amount of money. They're probably going to make a butt ton more in the next couple decades to come. And as they reflect, one of the themes that I have seen occur in multiple of them is when they were late teens, early 20s, they started something that the vision fundamentally rested on a short-term profit model. They needed some money for a car, a trip, to get married, whatever it is. They needed money for a season. They had a skill set. They made it happen. That's a short-term vision. Then here's what happened. Because they had never put it into words that this was a short-term vision and not long-term, they got to the point where they could move on and they didn't move on. Okay? And so here's what it led to. They didn't, and then they couldn't. So let's say they did this to get married. They didn't move on when they could, So then they started having kids, needed more income, and now they couldn't move on. Does that make sense? There's all sorts of different situations where this is the case. A teenager starts a company to buy a car. Then he doesn't move on, moves out of the house. Now he can't move on. Does that make sense? And so for those of you guys who have short term, I want you to identify that, execute on that, and figure out a way to move on afterwards. For those of you who have a long-term brand vision, I want you to differentiate that from short-term and understand the differences and the nuance, as well as knowing I'm sticking this out for the long run. And most people just don't know that, okay? I didn't even know to ask myself that question. So here's my personal story. I didn't realize I had a short-term vision, fundamentally, but I didn't realize that because no one told me to look at it and identify that. So I fit a round peg in a square hole and said, this is long-term brand. I just hadn't taken a step to step back. The short-term profit here is this business, and then calibrating accordingly. Does that make sense? Okay, so the point of this is to, one, make you stop and think about that. And then number two is to allow you to identify which one you are, because that'll totally change your path going forward, okay? And some of you guys automatically know which one you are beyond a shadow of reasonable doubt. If that's you, move on. The rest of this lesson doesn't matter. If you think you know, but also are wondering, or if you just plain don't know, you will know by the end of this, period, okay? I'm gonna explain in this video, and I have some resources in the written curriculum, enough of what's gonna help you to clearly identify that. Also, if you have the assets, what I did is I went ahead and built out 2 different tests, 2 different assessments. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow you, they're perfectly curated to probe and poke around at different aspects of your vision. And by the end of that, you will know with certainty whether or not you tip towards long-term or short-term. And this is going to really help if you haven't even begun to thought about it, begun to have thought about it, or if you're very kind of in the middle and you're like, I'm in the gray area, I don't know which one I am. Take those tests, that'll really help you. Otherwise, once you pay attention to what I'm gonna write down on the board, see which journey and path most fits that, okay? So here we go. Long-term brand, that's gonna be things like more focused on an ongoing lifestyle rather than just this season. Wanting long-term autonomy or control, that's going to really be a good indicator. Kind of these two are different ways of saying a similar thing, maybe 2 sides of the same coin, but that is a very strong indicator that you are long-term brand oriented. Another one is if you value giving discounts to lock in the long-term loyalty of a customer, this is kind of like maybe, you know, long-term loyalty being reoccurring or recurring or some sort of subscription model, whatever you want to call it. This is the idea that, or even, referrals. That could be an indirect version of loyalty from the customer. If you are saying, hey, I'd rather give a discount up front in order to get value back from them long-term, and that's not a selfish thing. That's just you saying, you know, we both help each other here. That's all indicative of a long-term brand, okay? Long-term brand. And by the way, if you're wanting to know more about this, just look on the written curriculum side of things. I gave a better description even than this of long-term brand, but that gives you an idea. When it comes to short-term profits, some of the things that we're gonna be looking at is more focused on a dollar amount, especially if the dollar amount has a deadline. You know, I'm very focused on this particular number I need to make, you know, 7,000 for this car by this amount of time. You're almost guaranteed short-term, at least right now. Wanting to get in and get out, this might seem really obvious, but this is what I was. And I had put this over here when I started because I was thinking an exit, right? Get in, build, then exit. Frankly, if you haven't even started and you're already thinking about getting out, unless you're some crazy planner that's planned all the way till retirement, probably short term, okay? Probably here and not realizing it. You might think over here, but things just take a lot longer than most people realize. And so probably if you are already talking about getting out before you've gotten in, short term. I would peg you as short term. And by the way, that's not bad. It's just important to have clarity. The third one I'll write here for now is if you inherently value cash flow or upfront cash over long-term growth on investments, that's also indicative of short-term. And what I mean by investments, I don't mean, buying stocks. What I mean is any time that you give over and above the value that you get back. So whether that be over delivering, throwing in something free into a customer's package because you find them worth giving the extra value, or whether that be a discount, or whether that be a free upfront. There were multiple times where I gave an entirely free service upfront to someone, and then and I knew that they were in a position where if they were appreciative and felt I was worth it, they could bring more than that back in value, and they did. So I would give 100% free upfront, and then they would refer me to 4 people, and now I'd have 4 new customers, right? And so this is a great example of not super long-term oriented. Genuinely, you are saying, nah, this is great. I need this, and I'm not as focused on this. Yeah, short term. So again, there's more information on the written curriculum side of things that's gonna really help you. And if you have the assets, just take the test. It's as simple as that. You don't even have to really think about this. It'll tell you. But at least now you know, at least we have clarity on that. That's it. Let's move on to the third module where we are going to get even deeper into very important clarity before you start your business.